The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today. Well, welcome to The Journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of The Journey. And today I have a special guest with me, Nathan Sill. We met a couple weeks ago. Actually, of all places, we were at a social emotional learning symposium at Beloit Turner High School, but it was all throughout different areas of the Rock County and northern Illinois had resources there, and Nathan and a good buddy of his came up and introduced themselves, and phenomenal story. So I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit of your story here today on The Journey.
Yeah, it's great being here, Kevin. Hi, I'm Nathan. Yeah, I'm from Beloit, Wisconsin. So it's great being here today and excited to, be on the podcast.
Awesome. So Nathan, as we usually do whenever we get started, I just ask some basic questions. When you have the opportunity to have fun, what does Nathan do for fun?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, obviously, I am a huge fitness person, so I really do like going to the gym, getting active, being outside. Devin, my friend that was with me when we met, he got me into a lot of hiking, getting outdoors and stuff. So growing up, I grew up out in the country, um, went outside a lot that way, but being with a group that goes outside and stuff and likes doing hiking, likes experiencing, just being in nature has been a big thing. So recently I've gotten into camping a lot more and that's been great.
Awesome. And so if you think of a place that you've been able to go either camping or hiking, let's say hiking, in the last year or so, couple of years, what would be a kind of a highlight place that you've gone hiking that kind of blew you away of, didn't expect it to be all that it was? Where anything pop in your mind?
Definitely. We went to South Dakota to the Badlands 2 years ago, and that was amazing. We don't really have any deserts around here in Wisconsin, so the biome change was completely just like surprising. And we camped out there the whole time. And they have a really cool thing that if you're off like a mile of any trail, you can camp there as long as you're not in the way of anyone or disturbing the landscape. And so it was really amazing. Some of the best sunsets and sunrises I've ever seen. Very, very beautiful.
What month of the year did you guys go out to the Badlands? Do you remember?
I think August. It was, yeah, I think August, end of
Okay.
summer. Yeah.
It's an interesting time period. I have South Dakota, that area of South Dakota, the Badlands and the Black Hills are one of my favorite places to go. I probably have been there somewhere between 20 and 25 times,
Oh, wow.
and I have lots of stories about there. I That was the place I went to ask God if my wife was the person I was supposed to marry. We got engaged there a year later. I dedicated my son out there. So I have lots of memories in that area. So did you, while you were in the Badlands, did you also go a little bit farther west out to the Black Hills, or did you guys just stay in the Badlands itself?
Mostly just stayed inside the national park. We only had, I think, about like 3 days out there. So it wasn't as long as we would have liked, but we do plan on going back out there again. So if you recommend the Black Hills, we definitely will have to go check them out. And, you know,
Yeah, when you guys get closer, let me know, and I'll give you some definite places to check out and to put on your checklist or your bucket list when you guys go out there. That's one of, like I said, that's one of my favorite places to just to experience and visit, but then also just to talk about and give anybody who's interested in going different places that they can see when they go out there, from the northern part of the Black Hills to even the southern part where Custer State Park is as well. So there's some awesome places to go and visit. So
awesome.
Nathan, you one of the things that you and Devin had introduced and told me about
Mhm.
was that you, besides exercise and fitness, that you really got involved with this concept or this movement called parkour. And so maybe you could explain a little bit, what is parkour and how did you guys get involved with that? How did you get involved with it? Yeah, maybe explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So parkour is derived from French military training, like from back when this guy David Bell, his dad was in the military, and so he took a lot of the military training and started applying it to actual everyday life. Like, how do I become the most efficient that I can be in my everyday life? So if something happened, like let's say like someone's in a fire or something, I would be able to get them out like um, and over time, lots of different athletes have come into the sport from all different backgrounds, and it's kind of become just like a way of movement, a way of experiencing like what your body can do. And so we've got a lot of new pathways. The easiest way to explain parkour, I think, is A to B movement. What's the most efficient? But over time, it's become creative movement. So how do you and yourself move through an environment, through a landscape that isn't necessarily a landscape that people might look at and be like, well, that's something that you can jump over, like a chair or a table inside a classroom. Someone might look at it and be like, that chair and table is, a place to study. A parkour athlete would look at it and be like, well, I can do like a vault off of it. I can do a flip off of it. So very creative movement in any sort of environment.
Gotcha. So when did you, I mean, did you, in your circle of friends, were you the first one who introduced it, or was someone else, or how did you yourself kind of, yeah, what was it like, and how old were you when you first started experiencing it?
So I think my friend Evan, who got me into it, would say that we all do parkour our entire lives. It's playing outside. It's climbing on things. But as we get older, we stop really climbing on certain things. We don't go to playgrounds as much, to goof around and move around. We go to a gym. We go to more confined spaces. And so I was a big athlete. I did swim my entire life growing up, and so I was very like in that mindset of wanting to be active, wanting to be fit. And so when I went into freshman year of high school, I met Evan, who was in the movie. He's a great athlete. And we were on YouTube, I think, one day, and he showed me a video of these guys jumping over buildings, and they're from Store, which is a big parkour team out of the UK. And I was like, oh my gosh, like growing up reading comics, seeing superheroes and watching superhero flicks, I was like, wow, I did not know that was a real thing that people do. And I was just captivated like immediately by it. So, and over time, we've just, I'm a big parkour nerd now. So every time I meet a new person, I have to talk about it, I have to ask if they want to come out and do it with us. And so, over time, we found other people that, share the same passion, same love for the sport, or at least intrigued by it. So we've grown as a group, and we add new people every once in a while to the group to come out exploring with us.
Awesome. And so, and when you say grow up, you said you grew up in the country. Uh,
Mhm.
you did you grow up? Yeah, where was home when you growing up? Where was that at?
Yeah, so I live in the township of Beloit, about 30 minutes outside of the like actual city, kind of by like Broadhead, Newark. Um, and so it was a little bit more like isolated. We had a lot of farming around us. Obviously, with parents working and stuff, we didn't get to go into the city anytime we wanted to. It had to be for like a sporting event, or if we had like school stuff like that. So it was interesting in that sense that like we didn't hang out with a ton of people. We either had friends over, or we had to really plan out going over to a friend's house to make sure that happened. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of parks and stuff. And so I think that might be why Devin and I connect a lot over the nature. And we've, because Beloit isn't, it's not a huge urban landscape. It's not like Chicago or Madison where there's a lot of cement, you know, structures and stuff to climb over. We had to be very creative in our movement growing up when we got into parkour. So we've actually been doing a lot of parkour in nature ever since we started, like jumping over trees, jumping over like, using the environment around you to be creative, to explore movement within ourselves. And nature has been a great way to do that as well.
Awesome. And so, high school wise, you went to one of the Beloit schools, Beloit
Mhm.
Memorial, Beloit Turner.
Beloit Memorial. Yep.
Okay. All right. And that was actually where my parents graduated from Beloit Memorial as well in the early 60s.
Oh,
And
wow.
they both lived on farmettes, you know, a 75-acre farm and like a 10-acre farm outside of Beloit as well, closer to like Orfordville, in that area. So it was, I remember I had fond memories growing up at my grandparents' farm and being able to just explore. And like you said, there was, you know, there was family there, but there was no neighborhood kids or anything like that. So I just was like just constantly just exploring, and there was no real you know, just don't get hurt kind of was the guideline, you know. So regarding this idea of how you guys grew up as friends and things like that, did you know, after graduating from high school, what was kind of Nathan's venture? What was the next steps after high school?
Yeah, after high school, we, as people do, we all kind of went our separate ways for that first year after. Evan moved to Milwaukee. Max and I went to the same college, Beloit College, and Devin went straight into the workforce. So we all had like little separate paths. We kept in contact, but for me, I was very focused on college my freshman year, making new friends, making new connections that like I thought were like being very socially awkward and struggling with anxiety and stuff in high school. I wanted like a fresh start in college to make sure that like, I got outside my comfort zone, was able to experience stuff and didn't like waste any of the experience per se. And so I would say I was saying yes to everything, going out and doing as much stuff as possible my first half year of college, and then COVID hit. And during COVID, I also had a back injury that was kind of like working its way up during that first year of college. And when COVID hit, I was actually in surgery, going into surgery in March. And so I woke up from the surgery and I was like, feeling okay, you're on all the medication and stuff. But when the doctor started poking around and stuff and seeing if I could feel things, they found out that they may have nicked my spinal cord during the spinal surgery. And they were like, we think you might be paralyzed for like, we don't know how long. We don't know if this is like super serious. You might regain feeling in a few days. After a few days, unfortunately, I did not regain feeling. So they brought me back into surgery to see if they could do anything else, cut it back open, removed another tiny piece of the disc. But um, yeah, I they said that they thought that I was going to be paralyzed for life, and so that first year after college was very hectic for I think our group. For me especially, I didn't really know what I was going to do with life after that. Like as I said before, I'd always been very active outside doing stuff, and so to have so much of your personality and like what you think people view you for and as taken away, and like having to redefine that was something that journey started. I think then.
Wow, that's just, I mean, okay, so let me step back a little bit. So you experienced an injury
Mhm.
or yeah, was it an injury from some type of accident, or was it an injury from, yeah, tell us a little bit about what happened that led to the point where you had to have surgery. So how did that all happen?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of it comes from probably not training the smartest. I overworked my body a lot in high school, wanting, to go D1 in athletics and stuff for a long time, and then changing to go D3 eventually. But um, I wanted to be like a very good athlete, so I would work like countless hours in the gym, lifting heavy weight, putting a lot of impact during my jumps when I was out training with parkour, and not doing as much stretching as I should have been doing at the time, not doing as much recovery as I should have been at the time. And so that misuse and like malpractice over time just built up, built up, built up. And eventually I was like, why am I having such bad back pain? Like, you know, there hasn't been like a really bad injury. Like I haven't fallen, I haven't like, slipped and, done something crazy. So eventually it did get to the point that I was like, like unable to get out of bed sometimes, having a really hard time moving around. Went and got an MRI, and they discovered that there was 3 ruptured discs in my lower back. There was like signs that it had been there for a long time. Like there was signs of like internal bleeding in the back area, and they were like, "Yeah, we think you need to have surgery." Like, well, not think. They were like, "You need to have surgery if you want to be able to, live with this comfortably." And so we got scheduled out for that March date. Mhm.
And the irony, right? I mean, is that if that would have been, a couple months later, then surgery probably wouldn't have, you probably wouldn't have had surgery because of
Mhm.
COVID. And then obviously you're in discomfort and you're in pain going into the surgery, hence why the three herniated discs. And then you wake up from it, and in my mind, it would be the worst thing ever, is that you now are potentially, I like what you said, we may have nicked your spinal cord. I'm like, what? Is that, it should be like, that's like one of the things you probably should really be cautious of. And I don't know how complicated that is, but,
Mhm.
or how common that ends up being, but, so, okay, so you wake up from it, you have a second surgery, you end up, they're thinking that you're going to be paralyzed, and
Mhm.
now not just temporarily, but potentially for life.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about what, and like you said, and I can identify with this as well, is that your identity was wrapped up in being a competitive athlete, with movement, and now potentially, or at least what it looks like, that this is not going to be the way that it had been up to this point. So yeah, so tell us a little what happens next.
Yeah, so I was moved to a Sun Prairie rehab center after that, and I spent the next like month, a little over a month in that rehab facility, learning how to do bowel training, catheters, blood thinning medication, learning how to move around, in a wheelchair. And I think it was very physically demanding. Obviously, you're recovering from an injury that mentally at the time while I was in the facility, I think leaving the facility was always the goal. So at the time, I was like handling it as well as I could have, I think, just because I was like, once I leave the facility, I think things will start to improve. Things will like mentally I'll improve, physically I'll improve, I'll be home. But after I left the facility, it was pretty much the same. And that's I think when it really set in for me that like this could be like lifelong, like this could be a thing that like continues forever because when you're in an unfamiliar place like a rehab center with all these nurses around you and stuff, it feels very like just like a very small part. You're not used to that. And then you go back to something that you are used to, which is home life, where things are supposed to be comfortable, things are supposed to be like, safe. And it feels exactly the same as it did back in the hospital for me. And that was like a big wake up call that, like, oh my gosh, this could be like like this is a life changing thing. I think that's when I really started like mentally having a very hard time dealing with it, is because I thought the escape I was going to have going home wasn't an actual escape that I had. It was just continuing to deal, continuing to learn how to live with this, debilitating injury. And so I think my main thing that like I really got out of it was a newfound appreciation for the people in my life, like the Siegfried guys, Devin, Evan, Max. At the time, like I said, I went to college, we had fallen out a little bit out of touch. Like we kept in contact, but not as much as we did in high school. Like we were seeing each other maybe every other weekend. And for them, they came over to my house during that time, masked up and through a window. But it really gave me a like newfound appreciation for the relationships that I had in my life that maybe I wasn't putting enough time and effort into. And so that was a mistake I had to look back on and be like, oh my gosh, like these people are like the true friends in my life, the people that care about me, um, you know, and family too. Like my parents and I, um, my siblings, all of them were there for me during that time, and family members that I hadn't seen in a long time, were texting me, and so it gave me a very like newfound appreciation for the people in my life that at that time, like for some of the time, I was just taking for granted, and so it was a nice wake up call in that sense, and led to a lot of personal growth on my part as well.
So yeah, tell us a little bit. I mean, I mean, I think for anybody that if you end up going in, you had an injury, it gets to the point where now it requires surgery. The hope and belief is that this is going to be, a stepping stone for the direction of healing and recovery and getting back, to where functional, right? And
Mhm.
better than functional, because
Yeah.
obviously with an injury like that, your movement was slowly declining as you were going, getting to that point of that March of 20. And now it's the exact opposite, right? I mean, now we got a whole nother twist that's going on with this. And so yeah, tell us a little bit about because obviously you're walking now. So I mean,
Mhm.
so there obviously was a span of time between, leaving the facility, the rehab facility, and now, 4 years later, you're walking, and I would have never guessed what you just said, when I met you, a couple weeks ago. So yeah, so tell us a little bit about how that experience was, and what was it like going through? I mean, I know for me, when I've had an injury where I ruptured my quadricep tendon as a
Mhm.
result of a hiking accident, and I was grateful for the years of being a competitive athlete and training, so that I utilize my upper body, to move around, because my lower, or at least one side of my lower body, I wasn't able to, and so I imagine there was an element of all that all that training, the competitiveness prior to that, to at least some degree, helped with your rehab. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the story of rehabbing, physically, but also then mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say physically, just like you said, I actually found that a lot easier because I had that background as an athlete. Like I had always been very competitive with myself, what I wanted for myself. And so for me, not being able to walk and being told that you're never going to be able to walk again wasn't something that I wanted to accept. So I started working very hard. Like if they let me use a walker, if they said like I think you can use AFO, like it might not be 100%. I'm like if I can get out of this chair, if I'm able to move in any way, like even if it's just walking with a cane for the rest of my life, I will take that over like, you know, not being able to walk again. So I put a lot of time and effort, I think, into the rehab physically over the next 2 years to get to a point where I was like, well, I can stand out of the wheelchair now. That means like if I can stand and just hold this, I'll be able to, walk with a walker. If I can walk with a walker, then I can move to canes. With the AFO braces, I was like, well, if I'm wearing these, now I can, maybe start trying to run again. And so it was very like baby steps, working and seeing what your body is capable of. And just like any sport, you start off like at zero and then you put time, you put effort into it and you see what you're capable of. And eventually you start seeing progress. I did heavily rely on my upper body, still being in good shape. When I was in the wheelchair, and they were like, "You can do like planks." That was pretty much the one thing they told me I could do was a plank, and I could curl like 2 pound weights. I was really like just doing that like 10-minute planks and like hundreds of curls with this 2 pound dumbbell, and I was like anything to stay moving, be like okay, I want to keep in shape. Like I don't want like this to like make me like just not be able to move in some way. Like I had to move in some way, and so physically I would say like I adjusted to that. I come from a family of athletes. Like both my parents did bodybuilding growing up, and so they also like my mom would have me in my wheelchair rolling around for like 10 miles with her while she jogged, and I was like country roads and oh my gosh, in a wheelchair are not the greatest roads to do that in. The hills are just so hard, but it was nice. I was surrounded by a lot of like good people at the time, and so physically, like I think like motivation wise for my physical body was easier to keep up than my mental state, which deteriorates so fast as you know. Especially in COVID, there's a lot of isolation. It's nice to see people through a Zoom call or through like a phone call, but it is very different than face to face contact. Getting out there, you're stuck in a room. At the time, like I had been used to not only moving around on my own, but when you're in a wheelchair, you have to like view everything differently. So I was mostly just stuck in my room at the house, you know, very like closed off, reading when I wasn't working out, and so at the time it just felt very closed off. Um, and because I come from a family of athletes that haven't like they take care of their bodies, they are very safe a lot of the times, and I'm the only one who's gotten into like a more of a underground sport like parkour. There wasn't a lot of understanding, I think, with the parkour aspect. Like a lot of blame fell on parkour as a thing that may have caused this injury that now is debilitating. And for me, wanting to go back to that sport at some point did start to drive like a little bit of like a wedge, I think, just because it was a very scary thing for the family being like, okay, you obviously are just coming back from this injury. Why would you want to go back to something that could make it worse again? Which is completely understandable. And for my personal like experiences with parkour and stuff, I was like, I think it's more coming from like this injury is caused by lots and lots of time malpractice on my body through not training smart, overtraining, stuff like that. And so that was something that like I struggled with, was finding connection on that, especially with the other guys that like I connect with over this sport, not being able to, be with me during that time. But mentally, just the isolation, I think, really got to me, like not being able to move, looking at yourself, seeing that you look different, like body dysmorphia in the sense that my legs were atrophying so fast. I'd look down at them and they used to be able, to squat and do like marathons. Like I used to run a lot with my mom. And now like you can fit your hand around like your calf muscle where it used to be and it's just bone. And it freaked me out a lot. And so it was a real struggle to like get through that time. I did eventually have to reach out to the group, my friend group, to therapy, get on medication because the depression got very, very real. And like at a point, I just did not think there was a way out. So yeah.
And then I think you had mentioned in one of the articles that I read that obviously there was a level of pain as well, and opioids are, it seems to be the medication of choice when we're dealing with a level of pain that you were experiencing. What was that? What was your experience with the opioids?
Yeah, so when I was in the hospital, obviously you have a button right next to you. You can push, even in the rehab center, it's like you push the button, you get more medication pumped into you. Um, and I think that might have been a reason why I was so calm in the rehab center is because I could push that button anytime I wanted. And no one's really going to tell you you're not in physical pain. Like you have a huge cut in your back that's oozing pus and blood, and you're like, I'm in pain. I need more medication. And at home too, there's a level of sympathy that comes. It's like I'm in pain. And eventually I started using, I think, opioids as a way not just to deal with the physical pain, but also the mental escape it gave you. Like for me, I was, in my room, nothing really to do. Opioids like made me feel calm. They stopped the anxiety. They stopped like how I was, processing the world. And so even after, COVID restrictions started leaning up and I was able to go out and about, and I wasn't even in a wheelchair at that point. It was, I'm out on my walker or I'm on a cane. I'm going to hang out with friends. I was not able to function in life without having like 4 to 6 or like oxycodone in my system to go out and like do stuff because if I didn't have it in my system, I was like freaking out. I was like, what are they thinking about me? Are they judging me? Are they like, the whole world is just like looking at me differently now. Like everyone thinks I'm weak. And so I was taking all this medication to make myself feel like comfortable enough just to, go to Walmart, which is like an everyday activity, but in your head because you see yourself differently. The world sees you differently. And so very scary. Luckily, I started seeing like a lot of physical like signs that like my health was declining because of opioid use. Like skin started looking worse. My teeth, gums started hurting. And so that was very scary as well. I was like, why are these things happening? As someone who does value their body as like wanting it to look good, wanting it to feel good. That was something that started worrying me. And so I started looking into it, like, could it be like the drug use? And I looked up, everything lined up pretty much with, you know, exposure to opioids. I was like, okay, how do I like stop this? And so luckily, again, it comes back to the support system. Like my parents were very supportive when I told them I don't think I need to have like this many like I don't think I need to be taking this much oxy anymore. I think I'm just using it to numb the pain. They did take it away from me, and it was something that was very hard for them because obviously when you start having withdrawal symptoms, it's very scary. Like I was not a very nice person to be around during that time. I was yelling, I was throwing things, I was very angry about like, and like we all knew that would come and go because like you're taking away someone's like form of escape. And but it was a not an easy time to get through. And so I again appreciate everyone who stayed during with me during that time, like the Sig Tree guys, my family, because during that time, like you as a person, like myself as a person, did not know if there was like going to be a way out of that like dark time. It was very like a tunnel, and you couldn't see the light, and everyone else is just staying with you during that time, and they're like, "We're here with you. We're existing with you. We'll make it through together." And that was very just like valuable, and yeah, saved my life. So
Yeah, well, it's always interesting when we talk about having setbacks And
Mhm.
when we have, and we all experience setbacks, and then there are things that are going to thrust us uh, into a bottom, right? Into this
Mhm.
this experience that we can't get our way out. We can't get our way out of this by doing what we used to do. And so this is, and for you, obviously that was times, you know, times 1,000 in this case. And then the opioid, like I think you said it, amazingly well, that the pain, the physical pain was one thing, but the mental and the emotional pain uh came 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 back with a vengeance. The anxiety that you experience as a young person now is even at a higher level, and the opioids are being used to manage that self-perception, that social anxiety. What are people thinking of me? And then now it's going to start taking on a life of its own, let alone the physical discomfort that probably still was there. If it's anything like the injuries that I've had, there's certain times of the day that are just worse than others.
Mhm.
Either sleeping or first when you wake up or whatever it may be. And to break that pattern of the utilizing opioids, um, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of intentional discipline to be able to, say no to something that temporarily is going to give some relief. But to your point, it's the nature of opioids. There's never going to be enough. And then even when you're at this maxed out amount, it still doesn't take everything away. Your just body starts adapting and tolerating.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't say it better. I think, yeah, your body, the tolerance got higher and higher, and it just really was like the more you take, the better you feel. But then at a point, it does just like kind of like plateau out, and then you're just existing on this plane where you're like, why isn't it working the way it used to work? Why aren't I feeling as good as I used to feel? And then you have to take more, and you never really, it's chasing that high that you never will really get because your body has adjusted to the point that you're just, again, just there, and you're confused and you're scared and you're like, why isn't it better? Like this was supposed to fix everything.
Well, and then to
Mhm.
your point, the fear of now having these side effects, and then the fear of the withdrawals that are going to happen as soon as you decrease or eliminate. And so that keeps us, all right, just one more time, and then it just keeps that cycle going. So now during that time period, did you seek out any professional help, or was it just um working through it on your own with the support of your family and friends?
Yeah, so I did have to reach out to the doctor and stuff. Like obviously during that time, I think when I was going in for the longest time, I think it was a little bit having the pressure of family around. I was always having to get driven around everywhere because I was in a wheelchair and not used to, driving with um like a modified car yet. And so it was something that like when I went to the doctor and they said, "Are you feeling depressed? Are you having suicidal ideation or thoughts?" I'd always say no because you have your dad or your mom sitting right next to you. And that was something that I was like, I wasn't ready for them to like, think less of me, or I thought they'd judge me and stuff like that. And so it was something that like I hadn't said before. At a point I did have to, we went to the doctor and they were like, "Are you having these thoughts?" I'm like, I am having those thoughts because this is the point I'm at right now. And so finding a pathway forward, I did get prescribed a few different kinds of medication to help with it. Started having like time away from it. Did not get to go to therapy during the time. There was online therapy options, but I didn't pursue them at the time. Later on, I did start going to therapy through the college, and that helped a lot. Mhm.
And so and when was the kind of the turning point that you were able to get away from all the opioids, and then you were able to start, regular movement without any assistance, either cane or walker or anything like that? When did that, because we're talking a little over 4 years ago was the surgery, 4 years and 2 months or so. And so so tell us a little bit about, what brought us here.
Yeah, so I'd say it started about 2 years after the initial, injury, like the surgery and everything, that I was able to start actually going back and start trying to find a new pathway or new relationship with parkour, with sports and stuff like that, and it was something, especially with the opioid use, I think it's like a very gradual thing. Like at a point, like as you know, and you said, like you wake up some days and you know, you're still like sore and stuff like that. Like nerve pain from the surgery has never gone away. It's always gonna be there. And finding like accepting that without opioid use was something that like I had to, you know, work through and I had to find new ways. So I started, you know, stretching more. That was something I did not do before. And you know, lifting and stuff, it's not something that's fun to do. And so as a young person, you're like, I can skip that. I, you know, want to go, you know, bench. I want to go do muscle ups over on the bar. Like that's the fun thing. That's what people are going to be like, whoa, that's so like, amazing. Um, but doing things that actually are good for your body and, you know, working on those types of things to make sure your body can be the healthiest it can be as you get older is something that I had to learn and, you know, start forming a relationship with. And so, yeah, I started getting back into parkour around like, I'd say 2 years. Really starting from like zero again, having to, you know, practice vaults, rolls, stuff that I didn't really hadn't practiced in a very long time, even before the surgery, because it wasn't something that it was such a beginner thing that like it came more naturally to me after 2 or 3 years of training. Now I had to be restarted and, you know, starting slow, being patient with myself was something I had to really learn how to do because it's just like as an athlete, like you forget that like how hard it is after you've been doing it for a long time to really truly start over at like a beginner level and like you know, not compare yourself to what you used to be able to do. It's like, well, you used to be able to do like this double Kong, which is a vault on two arms, like over this big gap. Um, Now you're gonna have to like start and just climb, see if you can climb over this wall like very slowly. And so being patient with myself was something that I had to do and not beat myself up too much about like not being able to do something I used to be able to do very easily because it was like learning a whole new body all over again. So
Sure, sure. And I can just, I can just imagine that it was a constant battle of, from, you know, like you said, not just comparing yourself to other people, but comparing yourself to Nathan of 3 years ago, or whatever it might have been. So kind of fast forwarding, there was a couple questions that I wanted to ask you about, and then have you kind of describe, you know, the big thing that you did, was, which was the film. But what would you say, Nathan, that you learned going through that experience, and obviously still living with it? It's not like it's, you know, that chapter's 100% closed. It's just you're in a different place in the chapter now. What would you say that you learned about yourself that you wouldn't have learned if that wouldn't have happened?
um I think the main thing that I've taken away from this whole experience is that like at the time, obviously, there wasn't anything I could appreciate about going through something like that. Like it was scary, it was bad. Everything seemed like the world, you know, was ending. And now being a little bit farther separated from it and being in a better place physically and mentally, I look back on it and I think because I went through it and I was able to make it through that very hard time, I've become like a better human, just being because of it. I become more empathetic. I can relate with people better. I can have better conversations with people. A lot of the things that worried me, like about how people look at me, that social anxiety that I had struggled with for so long, I was able to find a better relationship with it and work through it better because of the situation that I was put in. And so, yeah, I think that that is the main thing that I would take away from all of this is like just becoming a more functional human. Um, you know, that's able to, you know, make better relationships because of the hardship that, you know, I had to go through. So, yeah.
And one of the things, this is how you and I met, when we were at the symposium, was that you, took some of this energy and you created a film. And yeah, so tell us a little bit about this film. I know that you had an opportunity um, to show the film at, the Beloit Film Festival. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about the film, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about the film, what the intent of the film was.
Yeah, Afterglow is our film that we made this year, or I guess last year now. But it is a true passion project of our like love as a friend group for each other, what we've all gone through, what we've helped each other go through. And so my story is a small part of a larger story within the film, that we explore. And we explore, I would say, mental health is a huge aspect of the film. A lot of people feel young, isolated, that no one sees them or understands them. And it can be like very debilitating in the sense of like the world feeling so big and that you don't have any connections in it. And for a lot of us growing up, that is how we felt, because of the things that we were facing. So in different parts of our lives, and the film explores this, is when you're faced with something like that, how does human connection really help you move and get through it, and like help benefit people, especially young people, who feel so isolated and alone. And so we explore, Devin's family, his siblings, and their struggles with very turbulent home life. We explore my injury. We explore people's relationships with each other growing up, moving to different colleges, away from home, away from comfortable like friends, family, for college. And it's all through the lens of parkour. So our team is mainly parkour based, but we do a lot of like exploring and stuff, hiking, um, photography and abandoned buildings, stuff like that. And so we explore how things that might not seem, normal to other people have helped this group of young people really connect, really help each other through very tough times in their own life. And so the film really looks into that. And I think we've had great reception from it. A lot of people have connected with the stories of the people that are presented in the film. And I know the cast is super proud of what we've done and been able to do this year. The message that we wanted has really come through, and I honestly couldn't have hoped for a better reception with everything that has come out of the film for the first year. So it's been great.
So when an audience gets an opportunity to watch this film, watch this documentary, what is, as a collective, as the director and then the collective whole, what do you guys want the film to, what's the message that you want the film to do for others?
I would say like the main thing when I was writing the film and we were directing it, and I was like, we're gonna go to these locations and stuff. I wanted people, especially people that feel alone, feel like like they don't have anyone, that they are seen, they're validated in their experience that they are going through at the moment. Like there are people that have gone through something like this before, and maybe not the same thing, but that you aren't alone, that like you are seen, heard, someone out there cares about you. And I hope that comes through with it in the film. I think it does. I think it makes people want to go out and, form connections with others, which is just a big thing that I think like we all want to do as people, is make connections, make valuable people in our life, stay in our life, for as long as possible. And so I really hope that the film carries that spirit across wherever it goes. Yeah.
Well, what, just meeting you and Devin, a couple weeks ago, and then hearing about your story and not knowing about this part of your story, your aspect. It was just more about parkour and how to that, this group of people, not just guys, group of people, bonded over that and explored and had this cohesiveness with each other. But there's so much more to, as we've been talking, that's behind it. And I think you're 100% right. There is such a, I think it was amplified because of COVID, but it still carries on. I mean, right now that we know that, suicide amongst young adults is the second leading cause of death. And and that even though that some of the statistics have been improving, meaning from individuals not dying from suicide, but those factors that lead to that darkness are still there. And we know that those factors, regardless if it's an injury or anxiety or domestic violence or homelessness or poverty, these are all different things that contribute to that sense, as you described, that sense of hopelessness. And it's that hopelessness of how do we bring light to it? Um, how do we give a voice to it? And I think the message that you just said about knowing that, being able to do a film and letting people know that even though they may feel alone, they're not alone. There are people that, see them, hear them, and want to be a light in their darkness.
Yep.
So yeah, I give you and your friends a ton of credit for, you know, being able to have the courage to put your story out there in a way to be able to give back to other people you haven't even met yet, but being able to be a light for them. So, so Nathan, what would be if someone wanted to either get a hold of you or you know be able to take a snapshot or of you know what the film's like, what Afterglow is. What's the best way to reach out to you? What's the best way if an organization wanted to do some type of showing of the film? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So at the moment, we have an Instagram. My personal Instagram page is up, and through Facebook as well. It's just official Afterglow underscore film. That is the main way right now. It will be updated soon. We are in the process of getting our website up this summer, as well as also um, making Siegfried into an actual organization that will be able to have. It will have its own email, website, everything, and so it will be set up very soon, hopefully. We've been working very hard over the last few months getting that all set up, and so we're very excited for that next step in our journey. But that would be the main way right now is through Instagram or Facebook to contact me. Um, and yeah, I think my email and everything is linked through the Instagram as well. So yeah.
Well, Nathan, again, I appreciate so much, you know, that, you know, you and Devin came up to the table that I was at that day and introduced yourself. And I'm glad we had an opportunity not only to talk that day and share our contact information, but for you to be willing to come onto the journey just to share your story of yourself as well as the other ones, and then be able to talk a little bit about this film. So I definitely appreciate it. And if there's anything that I can try to help out with myself or either one of my organizations, I definitely would like to do that. And sometime in the future, would like to see if you and Devin could come back onto the show and talk about how things are evolving and how things are going.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing. And from everyone on the group, thank you for the opportunity. We're, super stoked to be able to, talk about the film in any like form possible. We all love the story and we want to get it out there to the rest of the world, I think.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Nathan. So if anyone who's listening, if there's anybody that you know that could benefit from what we talked about today and Nathan's story, as well as the film and as well as what could be, when we have setbacks, if they could benefit from this story for some level of hope or light in that darkness, please pass on Nathan's information as well. Just as Nathan talked about, in those darkest of dark times, it may feel like it's always going to be this way. But Nathan's story is a good example of with hard work, with support and a willingness to no pun intended, get back on his feet. This isn't just Nathan's story. This could be anybody's story. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Please comment and on this and then reach out to Nathan as well. As always, I appreciate you being here and look forward to being you next week.